Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. Welcome back to the second day of International Lasallian Days of Peace 2020, choosing to be catalysts of peace. I am Sofia Beltrano.
And I am Red Chu, and we are your hosts for today. Today, we are celebrating International Lasallian Days of Peace with a very special virtual conference from the Office of the Vice President for Internal Affairs of the University Student Government under De La Salle University, Manila.
International Lasallian Days for Peace is an annual month-long celebration for Lasallians to unite as one whole community to promote peace and take action towards a humane and peaceful society. This year's theme is I Choose Peace, to encourage everyone to choose to make our world a better place and to choose peace as a response to even the simplest situation.
That's absolutely right. And yesterday, we welcomed 3 wonderful speakers from each pillar, namely violence, inequality, and poverty. Yet for today, we will be meeting 2 very special keynote speakers who will be talking about peace within a community and how we can be catalysts of peace. Later on, our delegates on this Zoom call will actually create their own response and plan of action for these 3 pillars.
So we will now be playing the We Are One song for us to listen.
Speaking different voices, but now we are gathered here to fulfill our mission as one, caring for the last, the lost, the least, becoming the change that we all want to see. We are one big family, together one song, with our faith in the service of our community and God. Forever we live Jesus in our hearts. We are one. No matter what may come our way, together we unite. Guided by our founder, we can stand the test of time, walking on the path of what is right. The Lasallians without limits, now we rise. Together one song, with our faith in the service of our community and God. Forever we live Jesus in our hearts. Together never shall we fail. Together we sing. Big family, together one Lasall, with our faith in the service of our community and God. Forever we
We would like to invite everyone to turn on their cameras and to join us dancing the We Are One. So we'll be repeating the song and we'll try to follow the dance steps. So I invite you all to turn on your cameras. We will dance with you, so please don't be shy.
Speaking different voices, but now we are gathered here to fulfill our mission as one, caring for the last, the lost, the least, becoming the change that we all want to see. We are one big family, together one song, with our faith in the service of our community and God. Forever we live Jesus in our hearts. We are one. No matter what may come our way, together we unite. Guided by our founder, we can stand the test of time, walking on the path of what is right. Lasallians without limits, now we rise. Together one song, with our faith in the service of our community and God. Forever we live Jesus in our hearts. Together never shall we fail. Together we sing. Family, together one song, with our faith in the service of our community and God. Forever we live Jesus in our hearts. Oh, we are one big family, together one song, with our faith in the service of our community and God. Forever we live Jesus in our hearts. Forever we live Jesus in our hearts. We are one. We are one. We are
We start this event, let us welcome Sir Keen Palatino to formally start this event and welcome and give his opening remarks in behalf of Brother Bernard Oca, FSC. Good morning, Sir Kian.
Good morning, Sophia. Hello, and Red. So I'm giving this opening remarks on behalf of Brother Bernard Oca, FSC, Chancellor of De La Salle University, Manila. Good morning, everyone. I am happy to welcome you all to De La Salle University, and to the International Global Online Conference to cap the celebration of the International Lasallian Days for Peace 2020, which will end on October 21. ILDP 2020 was launched on September 21, coinciding with the United Nations day-long celebration of the International Day of Peace. Among humanity's deepest aspiration, the attainment of universal peace has been by far been one of the most elusive throughout the course of the world's history. As Lasallians, we have always been committed to the cause of peace and its essential elements of justice, equality, respect for the dignity of the person, compassion, charity, dialogue, and tolerance and respect, among others. I therefore commend and congratulate the Office of the Vice President for Internal Affairs and the De La Salle University Student Government and its partners, De La Salle Philippines and the Office of Young Lasallians, for hosting this significant event despite the current limitations posed by the pandemic. Anchored on the theme, Choosing to be Catalysts of Peace, this online conference brings together students from LaSalle schools around the world via the Zoom platform to listen to the experiences and insights of highly respected experts from the Philippines and other parts of the globe who will discuss how violence, social inequality, and poverty continue to threaten and hamper the attainment of long-lasting peace. It is hoped that their insights would help our young Lasallians, who will be grouped based on the above three obstacles to peace, craft action plans that would help promote peace within their respective Lasallian communities, in particular, and society in general. The plans of actions are intended to empower and unite the members of their respective Lasallian communities and encourage them to always choose peace as a response to societal issues, or using the words and insights of the latest papal encyclical entitled Fratelli Tutti, to enable them to respond with a new vision of fraternity and social friendship that will not remain at the level of words or rhetoric, and regard people from different geographical locations as not mere neighbors, but brothers and sisters. Pope Francis acknowledges that each new generation must take up the struggles and attainments of past generations, while setting its sights even higher. The world needs the strength and idealism of young people like you. Again, drawing from the insights of the Holy Father, will not be different to suffering, will not allow anyone to go through life as an outcast, will be willing to emerge from their comfortable isolation to create paths of peace and heal wounds. I am confident that our Lasallian communities, as well as the larger society, would greatly benefit from the work of our young Lasallians who have the capability to recalibrate and reorient the current order of things, especially the use of social media platforms to genuinely serve the cause of peace. Again, I warmly welcome everyone to this virtual gathering, and I would like to end by quoting part that capped the Pope's encyclical. May the Lord move us to create a more dignified world, a world without hunger, poverty, violence, and war. Thank you for making time to join us today, and I wish everyone an enjoyable and intellectually stimulating session. Let us keep the Lasallian spirit burning and persevere in our mission to serve as beacons of light for others. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you so much, Mr. Keen Palatino, for that very wonderful opening message. And I feel like all of us here in this Zoom call and those watching us in the live stream are very excited for our program that we have today. So, Sophia, I feel like now is a perfect time to introduce our first keynote speaker.
Yes, we should read. Our first speaker is the Director and Representative of UNESCO Regional Science Bureau for Asia and the Pacific. He has a multidisciplinary academic background and professional experience in engineering, environmental law, economics, and international diplomacy. He is a fellow chartered engineer and engineering executive of Engineers Australia. He is also an honorary fellow of Institution of Engineers Malaysia and the Myanmar Engineering Society, a fellow of the ASEAN Academy of Engineers and the Modeling and Simulation Society of Australia and New Zealand. He is also the founding fellow of the Academy of Engineering and Technology of the Developing World. He currently holds adjunct professorial appointments in several universities. Let us all welcome Professor Shahbaz Khan.
Dear students and colleagues from the De La Salle University in the Philippines, congratulations for organizing this very important webinar. The student government of the university deserves a big applaud, and all those colleagues who are involved in celebrating this International Lasallian Days for Peace deserve a lot of appreciation. I want to thank you for inviting me as well. So peace and sustainable development are at the heart of UNESCO's work, which I will be illustrating to you today. UNESCO is United Nations Education, Science and Cultural Organization. We have two overarching objectives: peace, contributing to lasting peace, and sustainable development. Sustainable development which can help eradicate poverty. We have priorities such as Africa and gender, and we are also putting special emphasis on small islands and developing states, least developed countries, and countries in transition. So the areas you are discussing in the context of peace, especially poverty, the areas related to gender, and the areas related to social inequality is very important, and I will be giving some examples today. Let me go to UNESCO's constitution first. It's very important for us to understand this statement. Since wars begin in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be constructed. So through education, through science, through culture, through communication information, and social and human sciences, through better knowledge, we can create intercultural dialogue, better understanding of our world, and that's the way we can help create peace. So that's the constitution of UNESCO. My office in Asia Pacific works for 49 countries, including the Philippines. So first, from the point of view of being a regional science bureau for Asia and Pacific, we are fostering sciences for sustainable development. And of course, science, engineering, technology, innovation, very important areas, and how can we bring them for lasting peace and sustainable development. But also we work for all areas of UNESCO, which is education, science, culture, communication, information, and social and human sciences in countries, what we call our cluster countries, where Philippines is a very important country for us. And I will be giving some examples from Philippines, from Indonesia, Malaysia, Timor-Leste, and Brunei for today's meeting. So let's first try to understand there are severe imbalances between people and planet. There are severe imbalances between people themselves at different levels. And you can see those imbalances around you. So there can be very rich people or there can be very, very poor people. And here is an example. You can see on one side, we have those high-rise buildings, maybe where some of the richest people may also be living. And then we have the slums on the left-hand side. And there are inequalities between genders. So for example, for only the 1% of the richest people own more than 40% of the global assets, where as 50% of the global poor people, they own less than 1% of world's assets. So this is a huge problem with inequality, with social inequalities, and of course, women earn less than only 10% of the global income. So we have serious challenges to consider, and that's where our programs are geared towards understanding those inequalities and how UNESCO can bring the knowledge from all disciplines to help solve those challenges. Also, there is a major problem with social inequalities related to human health, and that's where there are some people in the world who are dying because of many curable diseases, and because simply they do not have the medicines or the technology, and while the other nations may have the best of the technology, the best of the medicines. So how can we work on those challenges? Also, the food differences, food availability differences. So while many nations have surpluses of food, while still many people go hungry every day. So we have those challenges of inequalities which are becoming bigger. Then, of course, then there are challenges related to the extinction of species, with respect to also the greenhouse emissions, with respect to the global temperature. So the planet Earth is certainly badly impacted because of all the social inequalities and also because of the rapid acceleration of degradation processes. Let's look into last 200 years, and this is analysis up to 2018. And if you think of the most recent 2 years, you will be able to draw some further comparisons. If we look into the change of development by factors of magnitude, then population multiplied in 200 years by a factor of 7.5. GDP multiplied by a factor of more than 400. And if we look into per capita GDP, then maybe multiplication is by 65 times. If you look into energy, again, very big changes have happened. CO2 emissions, of course, went up, and our mobility has gone up by thousands of times, as well as urbanization is our big challenge. And that's the challenge also in Philippines, and where you have cities like Manila, where transport big issue, where the air quality is a big issue, water quality is a big issue, and those issues are in many such cities in the world. Also, because of the massive pollution, because of the urbanization, because of industrialization, our water sources have been disrupted. We have serious issues with the quality of our soils and air pollution. We have pollution because of excessive use of fertilizers and pesticides on agriculture. And at the same time, there are environmental and public health impacts as well. So in the context of inequalities, we need to think about the massive issues related to pollution. And those people who are at the receiving end may not have the ability to deal with these issues. Then natural disasters are also going up. So we know disasters like Yolanda, for example, in case of the Philippines. But there are many floods, many more droughts. There are major earthquakes and tsunamis which are affecting our region all the time, and their magnitude is becoming bigger and bigger. Then also oceans are at risk. There is pollution, there is overfishing, there is acidification, coral bleaching, species are becoming extinct, sea levels are rising. Many cities can be inundated very, very quickly into the near future, and many of them are already inundated as well. Then also, if we look into the future, what it may hold by 2050, with the way we are already having our ecological footprints, our ecological footprints in the year 2008, they were already more than what one Earth can sustain. And if we continue in the same way, then we need 3 planet Earths by 2050. Unless we reduce, we reuse, we recycle, we reduce social inequalities, we reduce poverty, we cannot come back to the equilibrium with what Earth can sustain. So what are our options? Should we become more efficient, or should we find two other planets by 2050 where we should move and we should maybe continue on the same path? So the simple message is we need to consider about these inequalities, we need to consider about ecological footprints, and we need to think about the issues of gender and poverty very carefully. So if we look into the lifestyles between different nations, if everyone wants to live the lifestyle of US, then perhaps we will need 4 planet Earths. If we think about the UK, we need more than 2. So whereas some other nations, maybe they are using much lesser. So we need to carefully see what is our rightful use of resources in this world and how can we become more responsible and how can we solve those issues. Let's come back to the issue of the social inequalities. I would like to draw your attention to this UNESCO report on world social science. Of course, it deals with the challenges of inequalities, pathways to just world. This report is available free of charge as an open access report. I recommend that you download and you look into what came in 2016. And of course, there are many more challenges which are coming through. So I will be giving you some ideas from this report towards the end as well. Okay, let's look into one issue at a time. So let's look into gender equality and what UNESCO is doing. So gender inequality is a very big challenge. So how can we bring gender equality? So education is one of the very important ways to address the gender equality issues. So if we have quality education which is for all, and is also addressing the special issues which the girls and women face, then we can help bring a level playing field for everyone to be educated and for everyone to progress into their lives. Also, in the areas of natural sciences, we promote women in science. We have special programs for women leadership in science. In the area of social and human sciences, we are working on how can we assess the policies of a nation, whether they are inclusive, whether they are addressing the human rights issues and the sustainable development. And then also another very important area is the area of culture. Culture is critical for us to understand each other, to understand our environment, our history, and how we can move to future while we care for all what culture can contribute to our lives. Now, let's look further into the challenge of gender-based violence and how education can help. So there are special curricula which UNESCO is working on to prevent gender-based violence for teachers and students. We also have the concept of education for sustainable development and how do we bring the knowledge of our world very carefully into the sustainability aspects of our education and better understanding of each other. Now this global citizenship education, that's critical for empowering a world which is peaceful, inclusive, and which is secure. These materials are available online and you're welcome to look for UNESCO. So going back into addressing social inequalities, of course, the global citizenship education, that's a key. Also, we have a lot of material which is available. There are UNESCO centers which are working in these areas of education for sustainable development and global citizenship education. So I invite you to carefully look into those material, and if you wish, we can link with you from UNESCO office Jakarta to work with your university and for you to learn individually as well. There is this Global Education Monitoring Report. In 2020, the report focused on inclusion and education, and very important area, of course, for the world, and very important also for what we are doing. This particular report has 10 recommendations for addressing social inequalities. So this report, again, is open access and available for you. Let me come back to gender and science. So I've introduced special programs which are for women in science. We have a special partnership in the Philippines as well with the L'Oreal, where we are promoting the best scientists and how can we help them become leaders. And there are serious challenges in many countries. Philippines, by the way, is doing very well on the gender issues, and there's so many capable female scientists in the Philippines. So I really congratulate them and their excellent work. We have a special program on STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and it has a special dimension about gender. Again, a global project which you can look into our websites. It's supported by the Swedish government. Also, we have an International Day of Women and Girls in Science. It's celebrated on the 11th of February. So, gender is a critical issue which we are trying to address into our programs. Also, from a poverty reduction point of view, culture has a very important role to play. For us to understand what are the skills which are available over longer period of time, and how can we empower those local artisans? Here you have the example of the rice terraces, which are amazing from the Philippine World Heritage. And there are people who can really contribute so many interesting things towards tourism. And the other example you have is from India, and the technical know-how they bring over years in terms of the different construction techniques. In the area of communication and information, gender equality for media and protection of female journalists, very critical. If we cannot have a free media, we will have serious problems for the society to address the issues of poverty, social inequality, and all what really matters for peace and sustainable development. I also want to draw your attention to special days. As I've highlighted to you before, the days related to science, the days related to Women Day, the days which are related to the elimination of violence, gender-based violence. So these slides will be available to you, hopefully, and you can certainly look into them. We also have a special emphasis on girls and their education. Let's look into what we have been doing recently in UNESCO Office Jakarta. We have been implementing several initiatives on education, for example, learning for empathy, the areas which are related to the prevention of violent extremism, the areas which are related to also human rights-based approaches during the COVID-19 lockdown. We are very actively working with youth and promoting the sports. And also there are emphasis on special aspects of how can we bring positive thinking and how can we bring better kind of support for the victims of domestic violence. So that's where yoga can play a very important role as well. And we have been also working on psychosocial support for victims of the big disasters like Yolanda, and with the DAPAD in Philippines, this partnership has been very, very successful. Here is an example of the partnership in Philippines for Better Life for out-of-school girls. And as you know, out-of-school girls have those circumstances which are not really in their hand. If they drop out of their school, can we bring them back to the mainstream education system, to alternative learning systems? Can we help them bring life skills? So this is the work we are doing with COICA and with the DAPAD. And in Tacloban, we are building a special facility which addresses some of these challenges as well. Let's continue with other activities which we are doing from our office in Jakarta. By the way, this is the photo of my office and some of the related meetings taking place. But of course, we work very closely with the stakeholders in the countries we serve. We are working on the ESD and Global Citizenship Education as part of Sustainable Development Goal number 4 and its target 4.7. We also have special training for ESD targeted at high schools, technical and vocational education in countries such as Timor-Leste. But also very importantly, we are working on how can we have better life for young people through sports and the important role which they can play. And that's the work happening in Indonesia, also in Timor-Leste as well. Let's come back to the human rights and sustainable development goals. We need to continue to think about both of them together. So we have basic human rights, like education is a basic human right, water is a basic human right, our culture is a basic human right, access to our science and technology is a basic human right. So there should be no digital divide. We should be able to have access to good education leading to better achievement in life and better jobs as well. So all of them are very important. So that's where these projects linking with ecotourism, linking with how can we have evidence base for better policies, how can we bring different SDGs like SDG number 10 on social inequalities and SDG number 16 on governance in our cluster countries. We have a policy lab which you can access and see how can we assess whether any policy is valorizing the inclusiveness and the evidence basis there. I also wish to welcome you to our webinar series. So here is one which is related to today's meeting as well. So this particular webinar focused on education, evidence base for inclusive literacy, for better education, leaving no one behind. We have a big area of youth and young professionals in Asia and the Pacific and their engagement for disaster risk reduction, and they have been very active during the times of COVID. If you want to follow any of these areas, you can follow them through UNESCO Office Jakarta, Facebook, or through my own Facebook as well. So there are important areas where we are bringing these issues related to sustainability, issues related to inclusiveness, peace, issues of gender, and how can we address social inequalities at different levels. Let me draw some key conclusions. And these conclusions are also from the social science report of 2016, and I customized them for today's meeting. So first of all, reducing inequalities is required if we want to achieve global peace. And if we want to have better human rights for everybody, a just world. And very importantly, if the sustainable development goals have to be achieved by 2030, leaving no one behind. Inequalities need to be understood and addressed in relation to different income groups, their wealth, bringing on board socio-economic differences, cultural differences, environmental considerations, and how people differ between different areas, even within a country or within a city. So we need to understand all of that very, very carefully. How can we open up spaces for novel solutions for dealing with inequalities or dealing with poverty? How can there be more socio-technopreneurship for better jobs, for also dealing with these gender issues as well? We need inter and transdisciplinary approaches. We need to work across different scales, and we need to think for global inclusive approaches. And those globally inclusive approaches are such as, for example, global citizenship education, for also making sure the standards of education are the same wherever you go. Everyone has a right to job. Nobody sleeps hungry. And no one is poor anymore. So those are very important goals within the Sustainable Development Goals as well. And how can we have better gender equity and gender quality, making sure that the equality of gender prevails. So with that, I thank you all, and I wish you a wonderful webinar. You can look into Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. And if you have any specific questions for me, I will be very happy to answer them. So with that, I thank you again for inviting me, and have a wonderful webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Shahbaz Khan, for this very insightful note. I hope you took note of all the relevant information presented by Professor Shahbaz Khan. Before we move forward, let us have a short intermission number. This performance will be held by one of the premier pop vocal groups recognized and supported by the Culture and Arts Office of De La Salle University. For the past 21 years, they have been honing soloists as well as group performers in various genres of contemporary music, ranging from pop, jazz, dance and rap, rock, R&B, liturgical and gospel music, and standard classics. Let us all welcome De La Salle Inner Soul.
Fresh cut grass, one cold beer. Thank the Lord, I am here and now, here and now. Summer dress, favorite part. Bless your soul, we are here and now, here and now. I'm wide awake, so what's the point of dreaming when your life is great? Celebrate the feeling, celebrate the feeling. Can't complain about much these days, I believe we'll be okay. Oh, 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 oh. Can't complain about much these days, I believe we'll be okay. Oh, 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 oh. We're screaming out, we're screaming out. I believe we'll be okay. Sun-kissed skin on my lips. Thank the Lord, I am here and now, here and now. Fireflies after dark. Bless your soul, we are here and now, here and now. I'm wide awake, so what's the point of dreaming when your life is great? Celebrate the feeling, celebrate the feeling. Can't complain about much these days, I believe we'll be okay. Oh, 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 oh. Can't complain about much these days, I believe we'll be okay. Oh, 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 oh. We're screaming out, we're screaming out. I believe we'll be okay. We'll be okay. Can't complain about much these days. Oh, 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 oh. Can't complain about much these days, I believe we'll be okay. Oh, 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 oh. Can't complain about much these days, I believe we'll be okay. Oh, 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 oh. We're screaming, I believe we'll be okay. We'll be okay.
Thank you so much, De La Salle Inner Soul, for that very sweet performance. And with that, I guess now is the time for us to proceed to our next speaker.
That is absolutely right, Pia. So our next speaker brings with him close to 40 years of experience in both the private and public sectors. He served as the Secretary of the Department of Education from June 2010 to 2016, where he led the implementation of the K-12 basic education program. He was at the helm of De La Salle University, serving as its president from April 2004 to June 2010. In previous years, he also served as president of De La Salle University System and several other La Salle schools. From 2017 to 2019, he returned to his post as president of De La Salle Philippines, the network of La Salle schools in the country. Currently, he is the brother visitor of the Lasallian East Asia district with the mandate to guarantee the unity and vitality of Lasallian communities and, of course, institutions in East Asia. He is a professed member of the De La Salle Christian Brothers and an educator at heart. Everyone, let us all welcome Brother Armin Luistro, FSC.
Greetings to all Lasallians as we celebrate the International Days of Peace. I think we wish to reflect on how we as Lasallians can be catalysts of peace. But the context of that is a world that is racked by terrorism, violence, division, competition. That is our world today. Further destabilized, if not disrupted, by a pandemic that has crushed almost every economy in the world. I have not heard of any economy that has not been negatively impacted by the pandemic. And so the natural response of people is lockdown, community quarantine. And as we are wont to refer to it, everybody may be in the same storm, but someone reminded us, but wait, we are on different boats. The way we take care of each other during the pandemic sometimes comes across as the only way to take care of myself is to stay away from every single one. Everyone is suspect, they have the virus. And in order to keep me and my family safe, I close my gates. Well and good. And there's no problem about that. But that is precisely what the challenge is during this time of great suffering for many people. For those of us who have houses that have provisions, for those of us who have economies that can provide government support, our lives are all right. We could shut our doors and our windows, think about ourselves and our safety, and forget the rest of the world. Pope Francis reminds us in a new encyclical that chooses to disrupt again our lives. Fratelli tutti. We are all brothers and sisters. As Francis, the saint, looked at the universe and all of humanity, brother sun, sister moon, we, together with all of creation, breathe the same life of the Creator. And how much more with those whom I share a similar humanity. But even during this pandemic, that seems to be the real problem. Because those who live in stronger economies will obviously want to keep the resources for themselves. What if the vaccine becomes available? Who will be benefited first by the vaccine? And what will happen to economies, to families, communities who may not have the resources to access that which can help heal the world? Can we allow ourselves to think differently? To align our minds and our hearts with the message of Fratelli Tutti? that at the end of the day, every person I meet on the street, but most especially those who are poorest, those who are at the bottom of society, those who could not access the world's resources, are brother, sister to me. In educational settings, the way we adjusted to this pandemic, to the so-called new normal, is to maximize online learning. Platforms, gadgets, connectivity now gives those who have resources a better chance to learn and advance. Thus, that digital divide has even widened with the pandemic. I wonder what happens to those who have no access to all of these resources. Will they be even able to have schooling this year? Part of what we are dealing with is really not new. The Dalai Lama spoke about this several years back when he referred to the paradox of our times. And he says, in fact, yeah, we have taller buildings, but shorter tempers. We have wider freeways, but narrower viewpoints. We spend more, but actually we have less. For those of us who hunger for gadgets, for resources, for things that we could flash before other people, we may begin to recognize that at the end of the day, life is empty, despite all these resources that we hold close to us and not share with others. This is precisely the challenge of peace in our times. Is it about the color of one's skin? Is it about the degree that I have earned from a reputable university, a top-ranked university? Is it about the latest game that I betted on? What if we enter the next UAAP season and all dressed in our green apparel, we meet our competitor, the blue side, look up into the person's eyes and recognize there, amidst the rivalry and the competition, that he is my brother or she is my sister. Would that change my world? What if the two warring camps in a political warfare begin to shed off and wake up one morning their biases and recognize that the political opponent is a brother, sister to me? What if the policeman who's ready to shoot this drug addict, this so-called drug pusher, suddenly jogs in his seat and sees in the eyes of the other a brother or a sister? Will that make a difference in our world? What if the person of another faith hears the prayer of the next door neighbor and recognizes in that whisper a plea to the God of a different name. Same God, a different name. Will our world be ever different? The challenge that Fratelli Tutti gives to young people today is a challenge to return to our basic humanity. Martin Luther King says the other paradox of our time is that we've learned to fly like birds, go to the moon and back. We've learned to swim like fishes, and yet we haven't learned to walk this earth as brothers and sisters. Is that just a change of perspective? What if we expand that concept and recognize that the world and all of its creatures are also part of the very life that God has shared with me? What if every animal, domesticated or wild, every element in the universe is connected with me, also as brother or sister? Will I pollute the earth? Will I allow this earth to be destroyed and be used just for commercial purposes without restoring what I have destroyed? The real challenge is all about how I look at myself, my identity, vis-a-vis the person that I meet, work with, or serve. In the Philippines, we have a very important concept: pakikipagkapwa-tao. My humanity is deeply connected with your humanity. And that is why I deeply respect and do not violate what is part of the humanity within me. When you are hurt, part of me is also pained by that hurt. Young people today seem to be carrying many burdens, a lot of gadgets that connect them with social media. But inside, they tend to feel lonely, empty. So much knowledge, but very little wisdom. So much food, and the same amount of wastage. Bigger cars, flashier vehicles, but are we any happier? In fact, there are more cases of mental health breakdowns today than in the past. We have gained much according to the paradox of our times, but we have lost that which is essential. The challenge that Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti, and all of these prophets of our time that is given to us, the challenge of the pandemic today, is to recognize that which is essential, what is deepest, and to be able to share that with somebody else who is very much like me in my humanity, because he is sister or brother. That is where peace resides. It's all about learning that the other is not an other, but a brother or a sister. During these very difficult times, when we are pushed to think only of ourselves, to be safe by being cut off from others, let us recognize, rediscover, and restore the humanity in our world. Let us look deep into our hearts and recognize that when I reopen my world, the person I will meet may be very different from who I am. Language, skin, color, tradition. But he is a brother. She is a sister. May peace rule us in this life. And may you discover the joy of sharing that peace with every brother and sister. Happy days ahead.
Thank you so much, Brother Armin. And I definitely do have to agree. We're all brothers and sisters residing in this world, and we should work hand in hand in order to restore humanity. So thank you so much, Brother Armin. I feel like everyone here learned a lot from that very inspiring and insightful speech. But before proceeding to our next segment, let us first take a break and watch a performance by the official street dance group of De La Salle University, Manila. They are known for their originality and versatility, specializing in hip-hop as its major component through their different styles of dances, aiming to establish Filipino identity in the local and international dance community. Family, excellence, legacy. Let us welcome our very own De La Salle Dance Company Street.
No business trying to take my baby. So I thought I had to let you know. Find someone you can call your own, cause now you're walking in the danger zone. And if I touch you, I'll be wrong. My man, I'ma be the one to bring it to you.
It must be the hour. She got me like that. If it get any fatter, man, the rule gon' have to get at her. And our situation won't matter. I come to make you smile in the freakiest manners. J to the L-O, hello. No, I'm not Lee Harvey Oswald. I'm the rule in a shot call off the ball like MJ in his early days. It's the Ink and Lopez now.
Funny, since you came around, now you wanna see what's going down. Trying to tell me how you want my time. Trying to tell me how I'm on your mind.
It's funny how money changes situation. Miscommunication leads to complication. My emancipation don't fit your equation. I was on the humble, you on every station. Someone play young Lauren like she done. But remember not to game the under the sun. Everything you did has already been done. I know all the tricks from bricks to Kingston. My ting done major, kingdom one wrong. Now understand L Boogie, not violent. But if a thing test me, runs to me gun. Can't take a threat to me newborn son. L been this way since creation. A groupie call you far from temptation. Now you on ball over separation. Tarnish my image in the conversation. Who you gon' scrimmage like you the champion? You might win some, but you just lost one. You might win some, but you just lost one. You might win some, but you just lost one. You might win some, but you just lost one. You might win some, but you just lost one.
Balenciaga. My blood slime out just like an anaconda. You go against me, then you just like a used condom. I roll them up and then I smoke them like some good guns. Hey, still doing drive-bys, but I wanna walk them. If I can't find them, you know I'm gonna stalk them. Cause they tape up on the scene, I had to white chalk them. Running from my gun, but my bullets had to hold. Posted in front of the tribe, selling dope till the sun come down. Take a right off the map, when I hit 'em with this whole 100 round. Young jock in the club with my Glock. You wanna play and then it's going down. We ain't hesitating, bullies get the blazing. I'ma lay 'em down like he in a lounge. Walk 'em down, walk 'em down, walk 'em down, walk 'em down.
Said I'm never like, you know, it's what you pack it with them automatics, we gon' send them to heaven. Wait. Hey. Woo! You feelin' sturdy, shake it. She like the way that I dance, she like the way that I move, she like the way that I rock, she like the way that I woo, and she let it clap for it, and she do it back for it, yeah, she do it back for it. Michael Mary, Billie Jean, Christian Dior, I'm up in all the stores. When it rains, it pours. She like the way I Michael Mary, Billie Jean, Christian Dior, I'm up in all the stores. When it rains, it pours. She like the way I when I'm in this
Thank you so much for that very groovy performance brought by your very own LaSalle Dance Company Street.
Well, that officially concludes the live stream session of our 2-day international event. Thank you to everyone, especially to our speakers, delegates, and of course, our project heads who made this event possible.
We hope that you enjoyed our 2-day event and learned a lot on how to be catalysts of peace. For our live stream viewers, thank you for staying with us for the past 2 days, and we hope you were able to learn insights from our notable speakers that you could apply in your everyday lives. For the delegates in our Zoom call, kindly prepare for our interactive closed-door off-air session as we collaborate and create our own responses in attaining peace. Once again, I am Sophia Beltrano.
And I am Red Chu, and we are your hosts for today's International Lasallian Days of Peace 2020, choosing to be catalysts of peace. Thank you, and Animo Lasal.
Delegates, we would like to invite you all to open your cameras to be featured on the live stream as our Technical Director, Brendan Barcena, cues you all in.